I had Sheikh Suhaib Hassan at my house a while ago, like maybe a month and a half ago, and he was telling me the best way to teach my kids Islam was to teach them the stories of the Quran.
True. As a matter of fact, our religion is very rich with sound, authentic stories, very useful and fruitful that you can teach. It varies from prophetic stories, Quranic stories, and of course, Brother Afdal was suggesting that a beautiful book that can be taught to our children at different ages, actually. Of course, you relate the stories and you notice the age level. So the book concerning the lifestyle and the biography of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is a very simple book that everyone can read and then simplify the story to his children, which is the sealed nectar of the Prophet ﷺ, Al-Rahiq al-Maktoum. There are so many other books in the market. Just make sure that whenever you buy or you address your children with a story, you buy a book and address them with a story, that it has to be logical, sound, and it has a reference. Because, alhamdulillah, as I began by saying that, we have enough stories, real and facts. So why we go for fiction and, imaginations and stuff like that?
Disney stories.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala presented in the Quran so many stories. Some say even it's like 1/3 of the Quran full of stories. Why? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answered this question, saying, لَقَدْ كَانَ فِي قَصَصِهِمْ عِبْرَةٌ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. Indeed, in their stories, in the stories of the prophets and the nations before Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, before us, ibrah, lessons and admonitions for people who have mind, for people who think and reflect. So, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also said in the beginning of Surah Yusuf, which have the same ayah, that نَحْنُ نَقُصُّ عَلَيْكَ أَحْسَنَ الْقَصَصِ. We, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, relate to you, Ya Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the best of all stories. So we have the best of all stories. Why we give up on that and look for something which may be right, may be wrong?
Exactly. I think something is very, I think the best way to get a point across is to tell a story. This is the best way of getting to any, age. I think if a kid or an old man or whatever, it depends on how you're going to tell the story. So, subhanAllah, the Quran is
Let me ask you a question. Do you remember some of the big stories or stories that your dad, your mom, or your grandparents may have related to you when you were young?
Yeah, stories that thing that remain in a child's mind forever.
Exactly.
You tell him a story from little, and maybe Brother Ismail can tell us some of his bedtime stories.
No, you want to hear
it's something that is always there in your mind.
You see the effect and the impact of the story, not only on the child, on an adult as well. If you want to have your child adopt an attitude, behavior, or a certain manner, instead of dictating to them what to do, relate a story which have that meaning. But relating a story is an art, which now it's not optional, that the parents, especially the mother, have really to master the art of relating the story. You see sometimes in shows that the mother is reading a book. No, this is not sufficient. You can just make a little more effort by reading the story on your own, summarizing the story, and appear before your child as that you know it all. Then you don't relate it all at once. You use an exciting manner, which is you relate a part of the story. Then tomorrow will continue. Then after you get up, we'll continue, and so on.
Yeah. When I was young, I remember my grandma used to tell me, because I stayed with my grandmother for a while when I was very young. So she used to tell me stories of the prophets. And till now, I like all the stories that I know about the prophets, I remember them from my grandmother and the way she used to tell me these stories.
Now, as a parent here, Hussein, before having a child and getting ready to tell stories and tales to your children, you need to understand one thing, that whatever you say, it remains in the mind. So if you say something wrong or false, it's engraved in the mind of your child. It's very difficult to correct it in the future. That's why it's better to make sure that you only relate to them what's sound and authentic. I remember when I was very young, that a teacher was telling me the story of Prophet Musa alayhi salam, that after he left Madian with his family and he saw a fire. So in the story he said that while he was in the train, and the train didn't have windows and it was very cold, so Musa alayhi salam saw there was a fire. So he said to his family, let me go ahead and grab some firewood so that we can get some warmth. The story remained in my mind until I was a teenager, and even after that, as that Musa alayhi salam was riding a train. Then I would relate it to others the same way. Just imagine that. The little mistake you make is engraved in the mind of the child. That's why you have to verify, especially with the stories of the prophets. There are so many what's known as Israelites. Fake sometimes, fabricated. So why don't we stick to what was related to us in the Quran? And you know, the stories were related and mentioned to us as adults, to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and to his companions for a very important reason, which would serve the purpose with our children as well. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explained that saying, وَكُلًّا نَقُصُّ عَلَيْكَ مِنْ أَنْبَاءِ الرُّسُلِ مَا نُثَبِّتُ بِهِ فُؤَادَكَ. Yani, we inform you about the stories of all those prophets. Why? To keep your heart firm and strong. Knowing what happened to prophets in the past, knowing the persecution and the harassment Prophet Moses went through, knowing what happened to Sayyiduna Yusuf alayhi salam, being thrown in the well, being sold as a slave, and so on, being thrown in jail for so many years, you know, that will give you hope. No matter how much suffering you have as a believer, there is a light by the end of the tunnel. So actually the stories of the prophets, and every story was mentioned in the Quran, was to keep firm the heart of the Prophet ﷺ and the hearts of the believers as well.
Would it be necessary when we relate these stories to our kids to say, like, this story was revealed to Muhammad ﷺ at this time, when he was going through the year of sorrow? The Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this story.
Asbab al-nuzul, I mean, like the reasons of the narration.
Let me rephrase it. What is the purpose of relating a story or saying a tale? What is the purpose of that? It's not just for mere entertainment. Otherwise, you know, you can just read any other story. But there has to be a benefit out of that. And that's why it's very important when you mention a story, especially that took place with the Prophet ﷺ, to mention all the circumstances, what Prophet Muhammad ﷺ went through, and why did this happen during this time. And we'll discuss this in details. It's also important that while discussing the story, you do not finish it up and that's it. No, you have to tackle the lessons and the benefits which your child should have learned and picked up from the story. For instance, that I want to teach my children to be honest and to fulfill their promise. A lot of people say, you have to be honest, you have to be honest, you have to be honest. Is this sufficient? This is an old-fashioned way. The Prophet ﷺ followed the most advanced technology in teaching the entire ummah honesty. For instance, he related to us a very sound story. He said that there were two men from the nations before us. Actually, it was the nation of the Israelites. Two men from Bani Israel. One borrowed money from another. So the lender said to the borrower, what about a guarantor? Somebody to make sure that you will pay me back. He borrowed 1,000 dinar. He said, well, Allah is my guarantor. Then he left for his trade and business. Actually, he had to sail, so he was gone for a long distance. Then when it was due to pay the money, he was looking for a ship to take him back. and he couldn't find any. Guess what? And he was so worried about that, he gave an appointment, he gave a word, and he should render the money at that particular time. So he found a piece of wood. So he got it, and he engraved inside the wood, and he deposited the money. Then he blocked the opening, and he threw it in the sea, saying, "Oh Allah, the man asked me for a guarantor, and I said, Allah is my wakil. It's sufficient for me as a guarantor. So Allah, I'm willing to render the money right now, but I can't. Oh Allah, deliver this money on my behalf." Imagine, you know. The man, meanwhile, who lent him the money, went outside hoping that the ship would have come so that he can get his money back. But there was no ship. So he sat there waiting. Guess what? That piece of wood which the man threw in the water, which he stuffed the money inside, reached to the other shore by the leave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When the man was sitting waiting and no ship showed up, he decided to go home, but he saw a piece of wood floating. So he said, "Let me take it so that my family can use it for cooking. At least I got something instead of going home empty-handed." He picked it up. And when he went home, they were breaking the wood. There he found the money in full, and he found a message along with that. That the man said that I couldn't find any means of transportation, and Allah is my guarantor, and so on. Imagine your intention of fulfilling your duty and keeping your promise and delivering the trust. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took care of that on your behalf. Well, you just related a wonderful story. It's not sufficient to end up by that. You have to comment on the lessons of the story, which I may ask you, for instance, what did you personally learn from this story?
Well, I learned that if you put your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will deliver.
See, this is one of the best ways to present the concept of tawakkul. Hussein.
Yeah, it's a very nice like meaning that I got. It's like it's how much you trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and how much you really, you know, like know that God's gonna do it. He's gonna do it in a way. And like, you know, it's like that, you know.
What about being honest?
Yeah, I got it. It's important to repay your debts on time.
Exactly.
To give the people what you promised.
The Prophet ﷺ said that one who borrows and his intention is to pay back, Allah will help him to settle his debt.
MashaAllah. MashaAllah. I need to run and use the hammam real quick, the bathroom. So hold on for just 1 second. I'll be back with you guys.
Okay.
Ask Huda.
Dear brothers and sisters, welcome to a new edition of Ask Huda.
I have two questions.
Please go ahead. You can read it in Arabic, and you can also understand the meaning in your own language. The different tafsir and the interpretation of the meanings of the Quran are available in almost every language that exists on earth by the grace of Allah. The water of Zamzam is for whatever intention you drink it with. Salih from Egypt, his father has the way, and he asked about how can he help him. Very good question.
Can we give a zakat to any of the dawah centers?
The ibadah, or the act of worship, is a part of the unity of worship. It has to be paid to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and in accordance with the guidance of His Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
Assalamu alaikum. Sorry about that, guys.
Alaykum assalam wa
It always
rahmatullah.
seems like I'm interrupting our meetings with something, my kids screaming or something like that.
So you see, actually, teaching through the story is much better way than just dictating to them what to do. You have to be honest. You have to be truthful. You have to know. Giving stories after stories would nail the concept which you want to establish in the mind of your child in a very beautiful manner that will remain with them even whenever it's necessary in the future.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran over and over again to be honest, to be truthful, to be honest, to be truthful. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to be honest, to be truthful.
That's true. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says في سورة النساء إن الله يأمركم أن تؤدوا الأمانات إلى أهلها. That's a command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to render the deposits and the trust to those who own it actually. But it was not just mere command. No, the command came as a result of an incident happened during the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and so on. So you see that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands, He commands along with a story. Okay?
Yeah.
Then the Prophet ﷺ keeps teaching us stories after stories. It's not only for children, but for adults as well.
Of course. I think I heard something about like a story with the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ about a pot that was full of gold.
Oh, you're talking about another story concerning honesty and so on. This is a very interesting thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's a combination of honesty and being content. You know, the antagonist of greediness and being greedy. The Prophet ﷺ, and this story, by the way, Brother Afdal, is an authentic story that the Prophet ﷺ related to us.
You have to tell that to Brother Afdal because he's big on it.
Yeah. Which is very important. It's very important to verify the authenticity of any story or any hadith we relate to our children. You know, I said that we have enough sound stories in a hadith.
Or to Afdal.
Yeah. Now, so the Prophet ﷺ said that about a man who purchased a house from another. Then, after he purchased the house and he owns it, he found there was a pot full of gold buried in this house.
Inshallah.
He dug it out. Imagine that you have all this gold. Imagine if it was any ordinary person. He would have taken it for himself and said, this is mine. This is my property. But guess what happened? He went to the person who sold him the house and said, man, I think that belongs to you. He gave him the pot of gold, full of gold. He said, what is this? He said, I found it. It was buried in the house which I bought from you. He said, well, you bought the house. It's yours. Look at the reaction as well. You know, it's yours. It must be yours.
He sold the money to
So he
the
said,
gold.
so he said, no, man, that's yours. And they disputed. Not over who should take it. No, every one of them wants to give it to the other because it is not mine. I should not be taking something which is not mine. Imagine the impact of this story on the child, on his mind, that something which is not yours, does not belong to you. No matter how much is tempting, that thing, you should not pick it up.
No matter how valuable it is, you must not.
Exactly.
Pot of gold
Even
is
if you
a lot
do
of
pick
loot.
it up, it is for a reason, to look for its owner. You know, lost and found. It's not to stuff it in your pocket and say, that's mine, I found it. Sometimes even knowing the real owner of the thing, and you say, well, he
Finders,
lost
keepers,
it.
losers, sweepers.
So anyway, the Prophet ﷺ, this story was not over yet. It's very interesting. This story is amazing, you know. So the Prophet ﷺ said that, so they went to a pious person to judge between them. That each one of them does not want to take it. He wants to give it to the other. So the man asked each one of them, do you have any children? So one of them said this, yes, I have a son. And the other said, yes, I have a daughter. He said, fine. Then have them get married to each other and give them the gold.
Nice solution.
Yeah.
Exactly. You want to establish a concept of manners, behaviors, or any particular attitude in the mind of your child and want him to adopt it? Two things. You yourself have to set a role model. You know? You have to do it before them. You have to practice it. Second, my sincere advice is through relating stories after stories. Stories after stories. Do you want another one on Amana?
Well, I know a good story that I would like you to tell the brothers because I don't know it all the way through. But about Umar ibn Khattab used to do these night patrols through Medina when he was the Khalifa, and he heard a woman through her door saying she wanted to mix the milk with water, and the daughter said, no, I can't do this.
That's a very, very interesting story. Because the impact of the story does not stop at the time of Umar ibn Khattab. It goes all the way to the Umayyads. This is amazing. You know, as the brother said that Umar ibn Khattab, and he was the Khalifa. He was the president of almost 26 countries, you know. And Sayyiduna Umar ibn Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, he used to patrol the city at night to see if anyone is in need or. You know, the story is composed of so many lessons. But now you want to address one thing, which is honesty. Then just elaborate on that. Maybe some other time you can elaborate on another lesson.
Yeah, just highlight another part of the story.
Highlight
Yeah,
and
exactly.
tackle exactly the part which you want to emphasize. So there, Sayyiduna Umar al-Khattab overheard the conversation. It was coming from a house, a poor house. A mother was telling the girl, her daughter, ordering her to mix the milk with water to dilute it. And the daughter answered the mother saying that, but didn't Umar ibn Khattab, the Khalifa, prohibited us from mixing the milk with water because this is cheating? So the mother, who did not really set a role model herself, told her daughter, well, but Umar does not see us. He can't see us. It's night. He must be asleep. And listen to the most beautiful response from a daughter whose heart was full of iman and the supervision of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She said, well, Mom, if Umar can't see us, but Allah does. Allah is seeing us. Umar ibn Khattab had a mixed feeling between anger and joy once again. He was angry at the mother, but his joy with the girl made him so delighted that he forgot everything. He rushed home, then he gathered his children, his sons, and he told them the story and said, I just want one of you to marry to this girl right now. But I'm the son of the Khalifa, and she's the daughter of a lady who sells milk in the market. And probably they used to mix the milk because they were so poor and in need. He said, this is the righteous girl whom one of you should get married to. And he did it. He married the girl to one of his sons. And guess what? There was a beautiful offspring as a result of this beautiful marriage, which was based on taqwa. The reference in this story, which of course you can relate to your child and teach as a lesson, was that the honesty of this young girl and fear and love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, disregarding whether Umar is watching or not, led her to enter the house of the Khalifa himself and marry to his son. Isn't it beautiful?
Inshallah.
That can really bring the concept of reward
Exactly. I was just going to say that.
for being honest.
Mm.
This is very, very important.
You mentioned so many good stories, Sheikh, and yet you have some parents that would go into narrating zombie stories, satanic stories, and end up scaring the children.
Unfortunately, this is right. A lot of parents, I would say no matter how much education they acquired, but to me they are not really educated.
I always say I'm an educated idiot. So
Because, you know, they don't understand how much damage they cause to their children by scaring them by awful stories like the jinni and, you know, objects which do not even exist, scare them. Rather, the Prophet ﷺ, there was an incident happened during his life. This is a story which you can always relate as that a believer is stronger than Satan, and that you always can overcome your Satan.
Is it other two jinn?
No, it's actually about Sayyiduna Abu Hurairah, may Allah be pleased with him. The Prophet ﷺ assigned him one night to guard the zakah sum. They collected the wealth of the zakah and the charity, so Abu Hurairah was in charge for guarding this wealth. And while he was there at night, Satan came to him. He disguised in the form of a human being, and he was stealing because Satan's to eat. He was stealing from the food of the charity. So Abu Hurairah was able to catch him, and he said, I shall take you to the Prophet ﷺ to punish you. So the man who was originally Satan cried, and he begged him for mercy and said, I'm hungry and my kids are starving. And Abu Hurairah was very soft-hearted, so he let go. In the morning, the Prophet ﷺ addressed Abu Hurairah and said, what happened to your captive last night, Abu Hurairah? Abu Hurairah was amazed. How did you know? He said that he lied to you and he's coming again. Second night, he came and he did likewise. In the morning, the Prophet ﷺ said the same. And the Prophet ﷺ said that he's coming again. So Abu Hurairah was very determined. This time,
With a bat.
if I catch him, I will have him
Baseball bat.
and I will take him to the Prophet ﷺ. Which he did. He did come. And Abu Hurairah got hold of him and said, man, this time I will never believe you. I will not trust you. I got to take you to the Prophet ﷺ to punish you. You are a thief. He said, Ya Abu Hurairah, if I teach you something that's useful for you and your family, would you let me go? For their interest of learning, he said, sure. So Satan said, Ya Aba Huraira, every night before you go to sleep, recite Ayatul Kursi. You shall receive protection from Satan and his offspring until the morning. And in the morning, do likewise, you receive protection from Satan and his offspring until the evening. In the morning, Abu Huraira came to the Prophet ﷺ and told him the conversation which went on between Satan and Abu Huraira. The Prophet ﷺ remarked saying, Ya Abu Huraira, صدقك وهو كذوب. He spoke to you the truth even though he's a liar. But what did Satan tell Abu Huraira?
How to find protection
in
from
an
Satan.
excitement manner that you do not really have to say it, wait until the child would ask, what was it? So now we can go ahead and say that Satan taught Abu Huraira that if you recite Ayatul Kursi, which is the greatest ayah in the Quran, out of Surah Al-Baqarah, if you recite it at night, you shall receive protection from Satan and his offspring until the morning. And if you recite it once in the morning, you receive protection likewise until the evening. Now, you teach your child that you're stronger, much stronger than Satan. Satan is no stronger than you by any means. That, ista'id billah, seek protection of Allah, recite Ayatul Kursi.
Inshallah, and by doing this, you show your kids that shaitan can be defeated by the words of Allah. And
Exactly.
that Allah is the
Not the other
all-powerful
way
and the
around.
Almighty. Mashallah. I think it's time for us to go and pray Salat al-Janazah for the brother who died yesterday. So,
Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un.
let's
There
get
is a
going,
great
inshallah.
word in attending the funeral prayer. So inshallah, let us rush.
let us go, inshallah.
Ba